Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Women Winning Wednesdays. I am your host, Attorney Elsa W. Smith, the owner of the law offices of Elsa W. Smith, and the host of Women Winning Wednesdays. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. The mission of not only my firm, but this show is to empower women through estate planning. And one of the benefits of this show is that we not only give you free educational content, but we also bring you some pretty influential guests with amazing personal stories. I enjoy bringing you guests who are making a positive impact in our community and work towards empowering women. So today's guest fits that bill perfectly. If you know Peggy Morris, then you know her true love and passion for sisterhood. She's a native of Baltimore. Peggy received her Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from Morgan State University. Her professional career spans over 30 years in the telecommunications industry, 8 years in the nonprofit arena, and 8 years in county government. Most recently, Peggy retired from the Prince George's County government in the Office of Community Relations. Peggy grew up with five sisters, and their parents always encouraged them that no matter what, they were to stick together. And today, that sisterly bond is perpetuated through Sisters for Sisters Network Incorporated. And as president and founder of Sisters for Sisters Network, Peggy, along with her cousin, Audrey Dixon, and two friends, Sharon J. Bullock and Dee Adams, saw a need to create a platform to allow like minded women to come together to exchange information, resources, and contacts to encourage each other to push each other forward to follow their dreams. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Peggy Morris to the show. Welcome, Peggy.
Thank you. So good to be here.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful to have you. Um, it's really a treat for me because I've been looking forward to this interview for the longest time. So not only are you a friend, I've admired all the stuff that you do, which we're going to get into in the interview. But now I have you on the show, which is fabulous.
My
So,
pleasure.
so before we talk about Sisters for Sisters Network Incorporated, I want the audience to get to know a bit more about your journey. So, if you would share with us a couple of significant personal challenges you faced on the road to success and how did you overcome them?
So, if we talk about me, there's a lot of years of conversation. And to try to keep it short, um, grew up in East Baltimore, five wonderful sisters and a brother. Um, I lived in a household where there was a lot of love, but there was a lot of tension as well.
Hmm.
And for a long time, trying to understand what that was all about. Um, so we dealt with domestic violence in my household. Um, it took me until I was about 24 to 25 to understand what that was all about. And um, it was more about losing my brother in a drowning accident.
So sorry.
And for some, through the process, my father had a tendency to remind my mother because she was totally responsible for my brother, not only my brother, but my cousin. They both drowned.
I'm sorry.
And my father had a tendency to remind my mother about that. So that was the tension that was going on. And I had to live with that. As I grew older, I truly understood what that was about. I realized that my father was dealing with mental illness. Back during that day, they didn't talk about mental illness as being that. It was they would say you were crazy, okay.
Mhm.
But as I went through life, I realized and was learned from other family members what actually happened with my brother and cousin. Um, as I moved into adulthood, traveled through life, and began to work in corporate America. And I saw corporate America in a different light as well. If you talk about challenges in life, I guess I could say I'm kind of blessed, not really having any serious issues, let's say with people or locations where I live or whatever. But I do remember, and you have to keep in mind, this is not like yesterday. I'm talking about in the early 80s and 90s, probably maybe before you were even born. But it was a period in time where I loved my job. I loved the people I worked for, but I saw discrimination. It's a little bit different when it impacts you.
Indeed.
And I can say I was kind of blessed in a way because I was fortunate enough to work in a department where I actually saw this. And the senior manager was a person who would, on the weekend, go out to this particular university and play golf. So if you're not smart enough and not to know, that's where a lot of business take place on the golf course. I would see on Monday mornings a lot of people coming in for jobs. Um, and so, as a minority in that department, there were many, many opportunities that were not given to us as Black folks. But the folks that came in from the outside, that came in that were not qualified, didn't not have a degree, got the opportunity to get the interview, got a job offer, and that was at work that Monday morning. So again, I saw that and I was blessed to be able to work around that because I was determined that I was going to make known that I saw what was happening and I voiced my opinion. Again, I was blessed because when you know your truth and you know that it wasn't right, and you saw it go past you day in and day out, you either sit there and accept it or do nothing about it or open your mouth and make statement. And so I look back and that was, oh God, about 30 some years ago.
Would you say, Peggy, that part of, I mean, because we could, spend like the entire half hour just talking about that because and that whole experience. And would you agree that, it's not easy to watch that day in and day out? How did you where did you get that fortitude to either, say something because you're in an employment situation? Right.
I'm so glad you asked that question because I'm normally a person that an introvert, okay? Not one that would try to push if I saw something. I might hold it in, but I got enough nerve. I just, after a period of time, you see it and you said, something has to be said. And I got the courage. I don't know where it came from, but it was perfect timing that it did. And I guess I was blessed in so many ways because it pays to speak up. And I'm so glad as I look back and I say, my goodness, what happened? What would have happened if I had not said a word?
Right.
What would have happened if it continued on? And I sit back and I said, and when it happened and when I spoke up, trust me, my knees were knocking. But what they say to you, don't let them see you sweat.
That's right. Peggy, you are, and there's so many people who are watching who know of you and know of your work and the impact that you've had in our community. When did you realize that you were meant to lead?
That's a good one. I can remember, as I mentioned, I grew up with 5 sisters and a brother, and I was always in charge. I was the lead. I was in charge, and I remember I have a sister that what we would do would put on fashion shows,
Oh,
and my sister would make all the clothing. And I had one sister who made all the jewelry, and I had another sister who was a hairstylist. And so we put all that together. And I was the person that was responsible for putting the program together, all the marketing, all of the communication. I see that now, but back during that time, all I was saying, it has to be done. And if it has to take me to do it, I will do it. And so I think that was my first choice of seeing that happen. Not until later on in life when I stood up and realized that I wanted to see more out of women. And I stood up and I said, we have to do something about it, is when I really saw leadership in me because I didn't see myself as a leader.
wow. Wow. Yeah. And isn't that so common, particularly with women? We do, but we don't want to see ourselves in that leadership and that dominant role. Um, so how interesting. Again, another topic that we could spend and hours on.
Yeah.
Um, I want to now talk about Sisters for Sisters Network Incorporated. Tell us all, educate us all about what the network is and tell us how it came to be.
It came to being, and the same company that I was just talking about, if that company had not folded, I think I would not be where I've been and what I'm doing today. So sometimes, and let me give you just a little bit of history. I worked for a telecommunication company back in the 80s and 90s and up to 2000. Loved the company. It was a company that was growing, that was doing well, telecommunications. And if you remember the days of MCI and MCI
Sure,
telecommunications,
sure.
um, wonderful experience. It was a period in time where the company was sold to another gentleman. And I always joke about when I worked for MCI, they treated their employees well. They invested in their people. Um, but when it was moved over and sold to another gentleman, I always joke about, I remember we would go to training and stayed at the best hotels, Ritz Carlton and da, 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 da. And then when it was trans and sold to this other gentleman, you're lucky if you stayed at Motel 6 to give you the balance in the two, right? And as time went on, the gentleman that took over ownership and bought the company was eventually sent to prison for I call it cooking the books, as if you understand what I'm saying. Give you a good example. Let's say that the stock for the company, because the stock was doing so well, it went up like $120 per share and went way beyond that. But let's say the stock was worth $100, and the president said, "Oh, it's worth 175." And when it hit Wall Street and it hit the community and found out it was only worth $20.
Mm,
Okay, that's what I'm talking about, cooking the books.
right.
And so when that happened, the company began to fall.
Right.
And eventually, at that time, um, they had to start laying people off. They had to release people. And at that time, that was like 2002, um, I was one of them. And it was, to me, it was a blessing because I had been with the company for 23 years. But at the same time, I was released with 18,000 other employees. And if that had not happened, I probably would have been still with that company. I probably would have retired from MCI, but it happened, and it allowed me to venture out and took me into a whole different world,
Okay.
a world that I could not even today say that I probably would have been engaged or involved in, and that's with networking. Um,
Ah. Hmm.
when I was waiting for this transition to be released from MCI, I can remember very distinctly. I went over across the street. I was working at Tyson's Corner, and I went over to the mall, and there was a bookstore. And I walked in, and there was a book on the shelf that says, "A setback is a setup for a comeback." Dr. Willie Jolly. And I had enough money to either buy lunch or the book, or I might have had enough to buy both, the lunch and the book. And it worked out so well, I did. I bought the book and I sat there and I started reading the book. And I said, wow, this is just on time, so refreshing. And luckily enough, I found out that he was doing a workshop in downtown DC. And I decided, hey, I got plenty of time on my hand. I'm going to do this because I felt that despite whatever was going on in my life and transitioning from a job to job, you still have to grow. You
Right.
still have to do some things to make it happen. And so I saw an opportunity and I said, why not? So I went to his workshop. And as soon as I walked into the door and into the room, who did I see? I saw Sharon Bullock. And I always laugh and joke about that. Sharon and I were at Morgan State together. Now, look at this as 25 years
Wow. Wow.
since the last time I saw her. She didn't know me, but I remembered her. That's how she stood out among the campus. And that brought us together. That reconnected us.
Right.
And we were in the room together. And life took us on this journey that today I can't even believe it's been 20 years.
And that's really like the I guess the beginnings, the seeds, the seedlings of what was to be Sisters for Sisters Network.
Network. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And let me tell you what happened. Dr. Willie Jolly had told us that he was going to be speaking at this very powerful networking conference. And he said, y'all guys should come and go. Well, I have a cousin who was planning to open up a nursing staffing business. Sharon wanted to open up a boutique, and she had a friend who was in the makeup line. And so we said, okay, look, it's 4 of us. Let's go. And so we showed up at the BWI airport. And I said to them jokingly, look, guys, we're going to this powerful conference. We need to be somebody. And, they laughed at me. They really, and I'm looking back, they laughed and they said, what are you talking about? I said, look, we're going to this conference. And I said, it's 4 of us. We're sisters. We're not biological sisters, but we're sisters. And then the word network. And so we got to Cleveland. That's where the conference was. And the first thing folks wanted to know, well, who were we? And I said, we're Sisters for Sisters Network.
I love it.
It clicked. They got it. And, I sat there and I said, I hope and pray there's not another Sisters for Sisters Network up here, because we would be in real deep trouble, right? So we made it. And we left that conference inspired, motivated, encouraged. And I'm like saying, but what do we do with this?
Right.
What do we do with it? And so we came back home and we said, we have it. And so we said, we're going to take the name and we're going to go to Baltimore and register our name at the state of Maryland. And that's been history, 20 years strong.
Wow. So, help us to understand. So it's definitely a network organization. It's Sisters for Sisters. So we're obviously, we're serving women. What are the areas, the particular areas of of focus that Sisters for Sisters has? I believe you call them pillars.
Yeah. Let me give you a clear understanding. When we started out, we had no clue what we were doing. Okay. But we did know that there was a need. We realized there was a need that if we could come together as women, like-minded, because you have to be like-minded if you're going to talk and talk the same language.
Absolutely.
And all 4 of us wanted to start our own business. Okay. So that was the key. And that was entrepreneurship. And we figured, why not network, and why not let's support you first. And then when we get you up and running, then we'll support her. and get her up and running. And then we worked around the room, just the four of us, and we made it happen. Each one of us were able to follow our dreams. We started our own business, supporting each other. And so we said, well, why not let's bring other women in? Because there's got to be other women who wanted to start their own business or organization. And it grew from there. We had women coming every month, but coming in, and we were allowing them to showcase their business or showcase their vision, what they wanted to do. And it was our responsibility to push and help them. And that went on. And I can tell you, it was so many women. And today I meet women that I haven't seen in years, or I've forgotten who they were. And they come up to me and say, you know what? I thank you. And I'm like, thank me for what? And they said, because you had a networking event and you let me come in and showcase who I was. So that does something. That, number one, inspires women to realize that they could do it.
Well, that leads to the follow-up question that I have for you. Why is it so important for women to have that safe space in order to be in community? Why is that so important?
It's important because we need space to be able to think. Okay, think out and think outside of the box. You need the space to be able to feel comfortable that whatever you say stays in this room. And it doesn't have to all be negative. Okay, but you still want to be able to say, if I say something, I don't have to feel that I should have not said this out of my mouth. You want a space that you can grow. And this is happening because women come back month after month after month. And it makes me feel good and makes me proud to see growth in these women that have come maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago when they didn't have a vision, they didn't have an idea what they wanted to do. And now you see they turned it around. They got their own business. They got a staff. They're doing amazing, amazing things. That's what this is all about.
I want to double back to my previous question because I feel like we just kind of rushed over it, and I don't want to do that.
Okay.
About the four pillars. Now, going on your website, I know you focus on domestic violence awareness, entrepreneurship, health and wellness, and education and mentoring. Can you speak briefly on each one of the four?
Yes, and that's why I wanted to give you a little bit more history of where we started at the beginning. And so, as I mentioned, we had so many women coming in, and it was about 2010 or 11. I said to myself, keep in mind, you have to begin to talk to yourself in a good way, right? And I went to bed one night and I said, what more can we do to add value to women? And I began to realize I was listening to what they were saying because the conversation began to change. And women were talking about domestic violence. And women were talking about health and wellness because women were dealing with breast cancer and they were dealing with all kinds of physical ailments, illness that were impacting their lives. And so we noticed women were talking about, well, what about education? What about our babies? What can we do to save them? And then we always kept entrepreneurship in the mix of what we did. And so I woke up the next morning and I said, I got it. The 4 in our name stood for something. And I realized the 4 meant, after doing some research, it's balanced. 4 means balanced. And so I took the 4 and I set up a committee for domestic violence. I set up a committee for health and wellness. I set up a committee for education and mentoring and set up a committee for entrepreneurship. And then I gave each officer a committee. So in my case, my committee is domestic violence. I took that because I have a serious concerns about domestic violence because I experienced it as a young person. And I'm always concerned about our babies, what our babies are dealing with living in that type of environment. So what we do on these individual committees, we talk about those issues. we go back and look in the community and see what is going on and how we can add value collectively. So, for example, domestic violence. There, it's that month of October that we focus on domestic violence. But domestic violence is every day. We have to talk about it every day. And so we, although we look at those four areas and these committees work amazing, I decided that I wanted to have an outside platform, which is what we now call Four Sisters Live. And I've taken those four areas and moved it over to that platform. So that way we could have the community engaged and involved and have people who have the expertise to come onto our platform and what? Talk about domestic violence, talk about health and wellness, talk about education and mentoring and entrepreneurship. So that's another one of our babies as well.
Wonderful. And you got ahead of me because I was just gonna ask you that, but it just shows you that we're just on the same wavelength. So I love it. When you think about what, an ideal member of Sisters for Sisters Network, because you've been growing, you started out with 4 women and now you've got hundreds of women who are members, hundreds plural. Just want to emphasize that. What does that ideal member look like? What are the qualities?
I'm so glad you asked, because one of the things that I make it a point is that I don't want women coming to the organization with expectation of something else. I want them to be clear as to what we do. So I always sit down and have a conversation or plan out that we have a conversation, because when you come to the organization, I want them to have a clear understanding that you must have a desire to serve. That's very important. If you do not think that way, then this is not the organization for you. Okay. We want you to come in because one thing we're going to do, we're going to add value to what you're doing. That is key. And I want to know, what are you doing? What is it that we can add value to what you're doing? That's the key. And if we have not done that, then we have not done our job. And so when I know what you're doing, I'm over here thinking, who are the individuals that I need to connect that person with to make that collaboration work? So an ideal individual will be, we love everybody. Anybody who wants to come and add value, but trust me, on the other side of that, we're going to be able to help you as well. So it's a partnership.
So, and because this is on the internet and people from all over are watching this, just to be clear, what are the areas that Sisters for Sisters Network Incorporated serves? Where do you get your members from?
Well, we're actually in what they call the DMV, which is the Baltimore, Washington, Virginia area. The core group is in Maryland, in the area of Prince George's County, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, all around the metropolitan area. But see, the beautiful thing about that is, and I'm so glad, see, you are so on point. I love you for this. We've been doing things over the years, and we have already committed in 2023 that we're turning the corner of our 20 years and that we're going to start focusing on affiliates. I have been approached many, many times, and it's because of the Power Networking Conference. That conference I've attended every year for 20 years. Okay. And so when I attend that conference, it's like a family reunion. And we're getting women that are coming to me and said, we need something like what you're doing in Maryland, in California. Can you bring that to North Carolina? What about Florida? So we're getting this, and I'm like saying, I think it's time. I think it's time for us to start moving into a different direction. And so our first location will be Baltimore, which is actually my hometown. So I got some key people in Baltimore that are going to help us grow. And build our network to expand to do more. And see, the whole key is that we want women to win. That's all. We want you to win. Because see, when you win, that impacts your family.
Yes.
When it impacts your family, then it goes out into the community.
So
So if
we've really gotten a little peek, if you will, as to the next iteration, the next chapter in the
yes,
growth of Sisters for Sisters Network.
you
So you
got
heard it here first, folks. Wow, so much good work and what a good environment for women. I love everything
it is.
about Sisters for Sisters Network, just from talking to you and just what I've learned online. Um, so you talked to us about the live show, so we know that, and it's just to be clear, that's every it's on Saturdays.
Yeah, it's every Saturday and from 12 to 1. And you can go to Facebook and just search for number 4,
Uh-huh.
Sisters Live. And that's all you have to do. And all you do is click on and we're on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Peggy, you know, we've talked about the work that you do, and I know Sisters for Sisters Network Incorporated is such a big part of what you do. Um, and you know what I do as an estate planner, we help people create legacies. You know,
Yes.
what do you want your legacy to be?
You know what? That's what I've been building. I didn't realize till most recently that building this organization after 20 years is my legacy. The first year, the fifth year, the 10th year, and the 15th. And if you're constantly doing it and you're doing it well, then you're building a legacy.
I love that.
So I want my legacy to be that we're leaving something because in 10, 20, 30 years, it's going to be a new day. But I hope that what we have done has had some impact on our young people, that they can take it. We're passing the baton to them and let them run with it.
Absolutely.
That's what I want to do.
I love that. And I'm going to put Sisters for Sisters information on the screen for those who would like to get connected with Sisters for Sisters Network Incorporated, reach out to you, see how they can get involved, see how they can serve and help grow the organization. Peggy, I understand that you have a 20th anniversary celebration coming up. So please share with us what that's about.
Wow. I'm still pinching myself because I cannot believe it's been 20 years. So that means when I started this, I was, well, anyway, that's another conversation, but um, we are celebrating 20 years of excitement, empowerment, connection, women that have been able to understand our vision,
Mhm.
women who get it. Let me put it that way. And we're going to celebrate, and our guest speaker is going to be, if anybody knows Joel Diamond Taylor, she was the first woman who embraced us when we attended the very first Pound Networking Conference. And if anybody knows anything about Dr. George C. Frazier, anybody knows Dr. Willie Jolly, anybody who knows Linda Clemens, this is the core of what we do. They are actually our mentors. We all need somebody that is above us that we can grow and feed off of. Well, these individuals are the ones that I feed off of, that have allowed me to do what I do to help the women that are part of the network. And I just been blessed. I've been blessed to be connected, and it's just been an amazing journey.
For people who want to attend, the date of the celebration is next month. It's in November, right?
Yes, it's Sunday. It's a Sunday event. It's Sunday, November the 6th, and it's from 11 to 3. And it's going to be at the Country Club of Woodmore. If you're familiar with Prince George's County, it's a country club there.
And
And
can they
we're
get
bringing,
the details
yeah,
on the website that I have on the screen? Okay.
yes, they can go to the website, and there's some information where they can get details about the event and the cost, and they can purchase their ticket as well. All we want is to say to women and to men, this is not only just strictly for women, because Dr. Frazier is going to be there, Dr. Willie Jolly. So there are going to be men. And it's very important that people understand that we have 4 advisory that are men that make up our organization, because we want them to understand what we're doing so that they can add value and understand what we have to do collectively. So although we're women, we do have brothers that are part of us as well. And so I just say, come. We are excited about what is about to happen, and we just want you in the room.
I love it. I love it. Peggy, it's been a joy, and I know that we went over time, but I have been loving this conversation so much that I believe in like letting things happen organically. And this is this intersection, this, of our concentric circles, meeting your world, my world. I'm thankful, I'm grateful. I walked into this interview with a heart of gratitude that I know you,
Oh,
gratitude that we are friends, and I look forward to any and all collaborations that happen organically as a result of this. Um, a couple things right before we go. One,
okay.
how can we support you on social media? Is it reaching out to you? If you're on LinkedIn, tell us where we can find you.
You know what? Again, we're on a mission, and the more of us coming together, green, white, brown, blue, purple, it doesn't matter. We just need to come together. It's so much talent in our community alone that why not?
Mm-hmm.
Why not can we get together and cross pollinate, I would say, and just share information and resources? That's the key. If we could understand the power we have when we come together, more than one, we got it.
Absolutely. And I know that people, you have a LinkedIn profile, so they can just find you on LinkedIn, typing in Peggy Morris. And as we featured before, there's the Sisters for Sisters Network website. I'm going to put it up one last time before we wrap up.
Beautiful.
Peggy, because I really, really don't want to let you go, but I have to, I do have one more question
I'm
to
sorry
ask.
we went over time.
No, this is fabulous. What inspiring message would you give to professional women? And we have a lot of professional women watching the show who are, say, in between careers, and they're trying to determine what the next right move is, to quote something that Oprah said. What is the next right move? What advice would you give to those women?
You know what? The key is, I would say, integrity. Know who you are, because I tell you one thing for sure, it will follow you. It will follow you. You less expect, you'll be surprised how things that have happened in the past, if it is not right, it's going to surface one way or the other down the road. So I say to you, number one, treat people right the first time so that you don't even have to worry what you said or did, because you know it was right.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Peggy, everyone, Peggy Morris, president and one of the founders of Sisters for Sisters Network Incorporated. Peggy, it's been a joy. Thank you so much for
Likewise,
sharing.
Elsa.
Thank you so much for giving us your time, and sharing this platform with me. It's truly been a joy. And don't leave. Don't leave. I'm going to send you backstage, but don't leave. Everyone, Peggy Morris. Peggy, it's been a joy, and I'll talk to you shortly.
Back at you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're so welcome. All right. Everyone, what a phenomenal interview. Yes, we went over time, but it was so worth it. There were so many good nuggets there. And quite frankly, anytime you get to have Peggy Morris on your show, that's a big win. So I'm really glad that we were able to have her on the show. And to recap, we talked about legacy, and we talked about what her legacy is. And she's been building, Sisters for Sisters Network Incorporated, along with the power of other women together for 20 years, for celebrating 20 years. And that's a huge part of her legacy. And I want you to think about what your legacy is. And it can take different forms because we're different people. We're called to do different things. So I want you to think about that as we close out the show. And remember, if you do need assistance with your estate planning or creating your legacy, I invite you to give our office a call. We serve the state of Maryland as well as the District of Columbia. The number, you've seen it on the bottom of the screen, 410-995-7719. Don't forget also, because this is also streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn, particularly YouTube, go on our YouTube channel, subscribe, support us. Help. We're on the mission to grow to 500 subscribers. We're almost there, and with your help, we can get there. So be sure to check out all the free educational content we have on YouTube channel. That's at Elsa W. Smith Law. I want to thank you all for joining us on another episode of Women Winning Wednesdays. It's been a joy to be with you, and I will see you on our next episode. Take care.